Welcome to episode 333 of the DFO Rundown. I'm Jason Greger, as always, presented by Fountain Tire. They specialize in tire and auto service, and you don't have to settle for a good deal or good customer service because at Fountain Tire, we'll give you both. We'll treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle. If you need new tires or maybe your engine has a little rattle, stop at Fountain Tire and they'll sort you out. Right now, you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear, until December 14th. Stop in at Fountain Tire or make an appointment. Check out fountaintire.com as we welcome in Frank Saravalli. Frankie, how you doing? How's your weekend?
I was good. Nearly derailed by Nick Sirianni's play selection and penchant for not taking the points on Sunday night. But short of that, quality weekend on the youth hockey slate, 2-0, 3 wins in a row. Kids are getting it and are in gear. And yeah, busy weekend. I was in Boston on Friday and flew back Saturday morning just in time for some minor hockey.
What about trick-or-treating?
I was glued to my chair here in the studio, so no trick-or-treating.
It's unfortunate.
But I did dress up as a Hanson brother. I had the blood and everything.
Nice. Which Hanson brother were you?
I don't know. I didn't distinguish, but
Yeah.
the mullet was looking good, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. See, for work, I just did a lazy costume on the show. I was an online poker player, so just wore a hoodie, hair, and shades. That was easy for work.
Did you actually try and pass that off as a costume? Like no one called you out on just that's what Gregor.
No, people asked who it was. They were fine. Yeah, no one cares. Like that was during my show. Like that was just for when we do the show live on YouTube. So thought I'd have something. Plus, the poker players, when you're on TV, they just got to zoom in on you close anyway. So what's his name? I can't remember the guy's name who always wears a hoodie. So that's who I was.
I'm still dying laughing. There's been a couple sightings, I think, the last few weeks of Phil Kessel in different places. And I know people are saying, oh, he's still trying to come back. And so I'd poke around. Hey, Phil popped up here on social media or popped up there or wherever he is. So I just, I have to check in for news. So I'd text a GM or two, hey, are you guys interested in bringing Phil Kessel in on a PTO? And response back, zing, must be a poker tournament.
Yeah, he loves playing poker. So, hey, good for him. So, yeah, maybe that's who I should have went as is Phil. That would be all right. But
if you want to hear a funny makeup story, I put, because I was the Hanson brother, I had a big, trail of blood on my face with red lipstick, but I did 3 shows on Thursday night and I left it there for a while. It was on for like 6 hours. So then I went to scrub it off later at night. And I guess I didn't really do a good job. My flight was at 6 a.m. the next morning, went to get ready to go to the airport, never turned the light on in my bathroom, just brushed my teeth, quick threw on a hat, ran out the door. I got to my hotel in Boston and I didn't realize that I looked like Heath Ledger. I still had from the Joker, I still had like the blood stain all over my face. And people were probably thinking, what is wrong with this guy?
This guy, mix in a napkin when you're having a strawberry jelly donut to start the day.
Oh my God. It was mortifying.
Well, hey, dude, it's like looking at that picture of mine. It's like, it looked like B. Arthur. So that's all I noticed.
Dude,
and my buddy
wish it looked like B. Arthur.
Yeah. No, well, I know. Trust me, I'm not an attractive woman. That's the one thing I've known, which is fine. That's good. I was made to be a man.
Let's move on. I'm getting weird feelings.
Now, hey, speaking of your flight where you were dressed as the Joker, you went to Boston for the CTE story that you had on Daily Faceoff. Tell us about this and where they're going. It's kind of the first time that there's ever really been like I don't even know how you would word it properly, but just admitting is probably the just strong word because
acknowledge. It's the first time anyone's acknowledged any person of any position of power at the highest level of the sport. It's the first time that anyone has even acknowledged the existence of CTE, and long overdue. But NHLPA Executive Director Marty Walsh not only acknowledged but formally announced that the Players Association has created a CTE advisory committee. It's going to start being made up with 10 active players. They're hoping to grow it to representation from all 32 teams. and it's going to be guided by medical experts. They're going to start real shortly here. The committee itself was unanimously approved by the NHLPA's executive board back in June. They kept it under wraps until Friday night when Marty Walsh received the Impact Award at the Concussion Legacy Foundation's annual gala in Boston. And so this is a big step forward. I mean, think back to all the communication that we've had from the NHL and the league over the last 10 plus years, while they've taken steps forward to try and reduce head hits. I mean, the only thing to date so far that researchers have found a conclusive link to CTE is repetitive hits to the head. We probably shouldn't be surprised by that there's a toll, a long-term toll that's taken, but it's been addressed in all the other sports. NFL has acknowledged it since 2016. We're in 2024. NBA, baseball, like they're all looking at it. Soccer is a big one. They're all looking at CTE and ways to try and prevent as much brain damage as possible. And for such a physical sport like hockey to have waited this long to address it it's been malpractice. And I think to get to this point where the players aren't afraid to step out from the league and say, yeah, we know this is real, we're concerned, and we want to do something about it, I think a really important point in time.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think it's one where, you know what, you have to likely go through a much larger sample size of testing when it comes to CTE, because a lot of the players that they test are ones who are, you know, like a 99% really good chance that they're the ones who have it. So, you know, there's lots of ways to look at it, and I think it's important. But you know what,
you can only confirm it when in someone that's died. So that's the tough part, right? But
true.
There's been lots of younger players already that have privately agreed to donate their brains to science. Guys that are still in the league right now that have agreed to donate their brains to science when they're done playing.
No, and I think, but in order to do it, you have to test lots of other people. Like, what's the percentage of the average schmo like you and I who doesn't play NHL hockey? And when you pass away, do you test your brain? Is there CT there, right? Like somebody banged their head when they smash it on, you know, going head over heels on your bike, right? Like there's lots of other areas to look at to suggest that it's not just guaranteed coming from hockey, is my point.
Well, yeah, and look, it can come from the new big thing, and I don't know what it's like in Canada because high school football isn't quite as popular, but high school sports, contact sports, youth sports. I mean, anything that involves repeated hits to the head. There's a reason why flag football is becoming so incredibly popular in the US. Parents don't want the risk for their kids. It's changing big time here. There's more flag football players in my area than there are tackle football players for 5 to 10, 12-year-olds. High school football is different. It's still king, but eventually we'll get to the point where people that had significant amateur and youth sports to point back to, that could be a telling data point as well.
No, 100%. And then when you look at how many NFL football players, Frank, never started playing football till they're in high school, illustrates that maybe you don't need to do a ton of contact football at a young age. That, you know, sports overall, excluding the, you know, the rare ones like gymnastics and other things, lots of sports are still late developing and, you know, physically mature and different things like that. So yeah, body contact at a really young age, I don't necessarily see the benefit, because the vast majority, A, will never be good enough to go pro. So why do you need to do it? And B, you know what, you get to the point where you're more physically able to handle it and you're a little bit smarter, and that'll allow, you know, you strengthen your neck and everything.
You just have more control of your body.
100%. So yeah, that may, because if you're playing flag football, you learn how to run, right? You learn how to run a pattern if you're a receiver. And yeah, sure, you know what, maybe D and offensive lineman, it's not exactly the same. I understand that, but you can still get the basics. And then you get to high school or that level. If you want to play contact, like there's so many, you see so many of those NFL players that are like, I never really played football until grade 11, grade 12. There's tons of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see which players step up to join the CTE advisory committee. I know they're still in the process of doing it. So I was asking around, well, who's on it? Who's going to chair it? No one was willing to say officially, but I did hear some rumblings. I think it might be Darnell Nurse. That's the chair of the committee. Look, still to be sorted out, but that was part of the early discussion.
And then the other factor is, so you mentioned a key point there where, you can't really do the testing until the person passed away. So maybe the advancement, I don't know if they'll ever have a point where you can do the test while people are alive, if that would help. But the generations, we look at the 80s and the 90s, and the game has changed, right? Like certain body checks that were allowed then, which, were, late, hitting guys to the head, all that stuff. And so that generation is likely probably to be more susceptible, right? Like we won't, if it's only for those, the current players aren't going to know for 40 or 50 years.
Well, that's the part that also really is overwhelming for players, is the anxiety of this, is the damage that I'm doing now. Is it going to affect my family? Is it going to affect my lifespan? Is it going to affect everything, every part of your being? How bad will it be? Will I definitely have it? These are all questions that players are quite legitimately asking themselves every time they're out with a concussion. What kind of damage am I doing? Which is totally, it's a healthy thing probably to ask, because we're thinking about long-term ramifications. But from a mental health perspective, the anxiety of it is really difficult. And we've already seen, so 12 of the 13 brains that have been examined from NHL players have been confirmed to have CTE. But there's the one that did not have CTE present. That player was convinced that he had CTE. So I think having a measured conversation about it, you can see how that part from a mental health perspective can be overwhelming. I think the education is key, which is part of why this committee is being formed. It's first going to start with education. Everyone needs to learn the facts, the basics, and then we can move into more advanced conversations about gear and equipment and changing, potential rules or anything like that. The NFL has taken massive strides. Like you're now seeing players wear those, foam bubble protectors on their actual helmets in NFL games.
Yeah, and practice more so, right? Because that's where they take as many contact for sure.
Yeah, but you're seeing it now in games. If you watch real closely, you can see a player has like the foam. What's it called? I forget.
Isn't it the cap?
Yeah, whatever that is, the cap. You're seeing players wear it in games now with the Guardian cap, as Pat says in our chat. Well done. You're seeing players put their like team helmet design over top of it to make it look like they blend in.
Makes sense. Yeah. That's you know what? It'll be good and to see kind of long term how it goes. I wonder if you mentioned how out of the 12 or 13, the one guy thought he had it, but he didn't have it. How many others didn't have it, but just didn't commit their brain to be tested, right? So what's the
or how many others did have it and didn't commit their brains to being tested?
That could be both ways, right?
There's a point is we're at this precipice now where we've learned a lot in the last 10 to 15 years as a society. Other sports are way ahead of the NHL, mostly because of denial. And so now it's time for the NHL to catch up and have authentic conversations.
Makes sense. Speaking of authentic conversations, a week and a half ago, Brad Marchand, after him and Montgomery got into it on the bench, said, hey, you know what, man, I want the coach to coach. If we have to have a standard here, and it's the coach's job to hold you to the standard. And that's what he does. I think that's what we should do. And the Bruins won both their games this weekend, Frank. But in the game yesterday, David Pastrnak, after a turnover, spent the third period on the bench. He's one of their best players. I've always been a big believer that, if the coach sets a standard and says there's a standard and then doesn't hold his best players to that standard. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of wiggle room. Not everything's cut and dry and perfect. And usually it's something that compounds. It's rarely just one turnover. It might be a few. And then finally, it's like one big one. Okay, enough's enough. We saw it earlier in the season, Knobloch with Leon Draisaitl. He missed a few shifts after taking consecutive undisciplined penalties in 2 games. And I look at that in Boston, and to me, that's a sign where when Marchand came out and said what he said, I think that just gives the coach a little bit more confidence to say, hey, I'm going to make a tough decision. It's always a tough decision because we're talking about now, if it's the fourth line guy who misses a shift in the fourth period, it's not really talked about as much, but it's David Pastrnak, and now it gets talked about. And I think it kind of shows, that Montgomery is going to be pretty consistent in what he deems as a standard for that team.
I mean, I'd have to really dive in deeper. And yes, the Bruins were up 2-0. And so I guess you have the ability to flex a little bit, which is important. Like game setting matters. He probably would have done it regardless to send the message. But at what point and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, because I think in the end, there's nothing more important than getting that structure right and making sure that the message is being delivered. If someone's not holding up their end of the bargain, no one is bigger than the team. And I think that's really important to point out. However, the big differentiator here for me between Pastrnak and Draisaitl a couple weeks back is Draisaitl missed a couple shifts.
Yeah.
Message sent.
Yeah. Well, he came back and they were on a power play and they were in a game that they needed to win, right?
But still, stapling your team's best player, which I think we can all agree Pastrnak is, to the bench for an entire period is a little bit different than that. I mean, I don't know that he gets enough credit for just take their first period power play goal that they scored. David Pastrnak was being triple teamed in front of the net.
Yeah.
There were 3 guys covering him. And yet they still are able to get the puck to Charlie Coyle, who scores solely because 3 of the 4 Kraken players are on the ice covering Pastrnak. That's not going to show up on the score sheet, but that's Pastrnak being Pastrnak. So to me, this is just my own personal take. I like the boldness to be able to sit him down. I wonder if a period is a bridge too far.
Fair question, right? And I guess we'll see kind of how he reacts. And, I'm sure they have a conversation afterwards. And maybe they don't. But it's usually when a coach makes this decision, Frank, it's something that isn't just a one-off, right? It's not one turnover, because you can't coach and just come down on guys due to one turnover. You can't do it because turnovers are part of the game, right? So I would have to think that this is something that has been building, don't you? Because you're right. An entire period's a lot different than 1 or 2 shifts.
Yeah, I bet it was not an isolated. He was charged with 2 turnovers on the game. I bet it's probably stretching back to, this is probably something that he's pointed out to him a couple times privately over the past few weeks. Hey, we can't have that. And then it surfaces and it bubbles over and you have to make a decision. Let's just look at the larger picture here. And then also listen to Jim Montgomery. Listen to some of the things he said this weekend. We've played way more connected. Their first period was the best that they've had all season. And they won back-to-back games. So much needed, by the way. Big 4 points this weekend for the Bruins, who are, I don't know, you go look at the standings now and you go, oh, okay, well, they're 1 point away from second place. How bad is it really? So I love the message sent, but I think we are all going to make a way bigger thing out of this because it was for a whole period, as opposed to just delivering the message subtly, like with Draisaitl, and everyone just moved on.
Now, in that game, their opposition, the Seattle Kraken, they did not have a good weekend. Shutout in Ottawa, then shutout in Boston. They've played 13 games this season. They've been shut out 3 times, Frank. They're really kind of sink or swim, because if you look at their three of their victories, they scored 8, 7, and 6 goals. But in a lot of their losses, they're scoring 1, 2, like 8 of their 13 games, they've scored 2 goals or fewer, and 3 times they've been shut out. I look at that, the offense, and just kind of the pop gun offense, especially lately, because if you look in 4 of their last 5 games, 0 goals, 0 goals, 1 goal, 1 goal. Now they had the one where they scored 8 against Montreal, who right now can't stop a beach ball as a team defensively. And just, I wonder how concerned they are about the offense in Seattle.
I mean, I would be. It goes back to, let's have the more larger holistic conversation about the Seattle Kraken, which is they don't have a star. They
No.
don't have anything close to resembling a superstar. And that's sort of, I think, a byproduct of the expansion era. I mean, Vegas has been able to combat it because they traded for one in Jack Eichel, signed another in Alex Pietrangelo. Like, they've,
Traded for Mark Stone.
yeah, I mean, they were able to swing big and combat that. Part of it is the nature of the expansion draft. You're drafting at best number 4 defensemen and at best third and fourth line players for the most part, right? Just by the nature of the structure of it. Then when you draft and you're not getting number 1 overall, it's much harder to find stars and superstars. It just is. It's a fact of the setup. So not knocking them for it, but they also haven't really done anything else otherwise to take a big swing, as far as I know, to get some. So part of that is a roster construction thing. And speaking of roster construction, just on the Kraken moving forward, they have too many forwards. They will look at some point in the next few weeks here, I'm told, to move a forward if everyone stays healthy. Their situation right now is Vince Dunn is on LTIR. When he is off of LTIR, they're going to have to move someone.
Yeah. But who?
The two players that pretty much everyone has circled are Yanni Gourde and Brandon Tanev. Both are pending UFAs. Gourde is at 5.1 million. Tanev is at 3.5. And Gourde has, you want to talk about being shut out, Gourde has 0 goals and 3 assists this year. He's also been whistled for a team high 20 penalty minutes. All those things, to me, with his ice time being down 2.5 to 3 minutes a game, signals for me a player who at turning 33 soon is struggling to keep up a little bit.
Possibly. I haven't watched enough of Seattle for me to comment on if he's lost a step, but he's always been a guy, plays a little bit agitating. So what is it now? Are his penalties hooking penalties? Or are they roughing penalties? Right. I'd have to do a deep dive into it. But the fact that he's got no goals for Frank in 13 games and, is making 5 bills, and, Yanni Gourde, I think on a competitive team, he probably fits a third line role a lot better because you're not really expecting offense. When you're on a team that doesn't have a ton, Jared McCann's had a really good season for Seattle offensively. Should point that out. Eberle's got 6 goals. Those guys are producing fine, but the rest of their team is where the issue comes in Seattle. Getting Dunn back should help their offense, I would think. He moves the puck very well, highly competitive player. But, Yanni Gourde, I think closer to the deadline, like if you're Seattle, you're going to have to retain cap for sure. But closer to the deadline, I think he'd make a lot more sense for a team just because it's a way lower cap hit. And, he's a guy that does have a playoff pedigree, knows how to compete. And we know that matters to a lot of teams.
Look, I can tell you a bunch of teams have called about Gourde to this point. The Kraken have rebuffed that and not shown any interest in moving him. Tanev, I think, is a little bit different. There still would be interest because he's the one guy that has that speed to really be a strong forechecker. And that's the tough part for the Kraken is you don't really want to give up on Tanev because you need the forechecking. Like you go around and around here. It's a catch-22.
Yes. Yeah, no, I like Tanev a lot. And certain guys, everybody looks better on a better team, right? For a lot of players, that's just the truth. And especially I think for bottom 6 forwards that you can, it's easier to play your role. You're a penalty killer, you're 5-on-5, you get some momentum. And then all of a sudden your top guys take advantage of that momentum and boom, they score. Now everybody feels better. At times, I think it's easier to be a bottom 6 guy.
Can we revisit for 1 second, just your most out of pocket take ever, which is that Shane Wright will be better than Matty Beniers?
Yeah, buddy, 10 games doesn't make anything.
I get it. I want to tell you, and I'm not knocking you, and I'm sure you get the same stuff about me occasionally. I had a current NHL front office executive call me out of the clear blue sky to tell me that he is a loyal listener to the pod, to tell me that you saying that Shane Wright will be better than Matty Beniers at any point, he said that's the craziest thing he's heard so far.
All right. Well, we'll see. But everybody, and I could be wrong. I have no problem with I'm wrong, but it's where, and what I said was I was less concerned about Wright long term. And I said Beniers has a higher ceiling potential, but is he going to reach it? Right? We'll see.
I don't know, Tyler. I hope you're scribbling down some notes and keeping track here, because he is not straying away from the Shane Wright. 1 goal, 1 assist for 2 points in 13 games. Not a good start.
It's a sprint. It's not a sprint. So, and I have no problem if in a few years I'm wrong. No problem with that. So,
okay. I just wanted to revisit it.
Yeah. We'll get said executive. Let's go through his track record, because I'm pretty sure not everybody's bang on. Let's look at drafting.
No, look, there are always mistakes, for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah. Few other things. Speaking of evaluations, if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, who have absolutely been killing it lately, like they are dominating teams, but I wonder if there's a tad of concern of, because if there's been one thing in Carolina, there's a few things that are consistent. They as a group just come at you like a pack of dogs. They attack. They get to the playoffs, unfortunately, and they don't necessarily have a lead dog. They don't have a big time score. Sebastian Aho, hell of a player. He's not in the category of the McKinnons and the McDavids, and go down the list of those type of guys. And the other concern, Frank, is that Freddie Anderson gets banged up at key times. And I don't know if it's ever preventable, but do you not get a little bit of deja vu right now in Carolina? They're dominating, they're playing great, and once again, Freddie Anderson's hurt.
I'm not as concerned about their goaltending. I'm really not.
When he's healthy, he's great. Are you concerned about his health, not his play?
No, I mean, I've always been concerned about his health. It's like and the blood clotting issue aside, he's more or less been a human Band-Aid for the last 5 years, which is why the Toronto Maple Leafs moved on from him.
Like, if you're Eric Tulsky, do you think you have to go out there before the deadline and get a goalie with it's hard to find a better playing track record, because when he plays, he's really good.
I don't think they think about it like that. I think they think about it like, we've got Kochetkov. We feel really confident in him. He's signed for the next few years. We like Spencer Martin as one of the better third goalie options in the league. And we'll just wait until Freddie Anderson gets healthy, which at some point he does. They're never like out for 8 months. It's always like out for 3 weeks.
I agreed.
So I just don't see them giving up assets really to do it, and cap space. They don't really have any cap space. So I don't think anyone in the league has spent enough time, speaking of the Canes, talking about Marty Necas. Are you kidding me? 15 points in his last 6 games. 5 goals, 10 assists, 15 points in 6 games. Dude has been on an absolute heater. And the Canes also on an absolute heater.
Oh, like, they're not just winning, like they are spanking teams right now.
And pretty good teams.
Yes. Like, they have, you got to give them full marks they had a little bit of a slow start. And
no, they didn't. They just didn't play many games.
Yeah.
They played way fewer games than anyone else. They did to start. They were at like 2 games when everyone else was at 6. That's why it looked like they were off to a slow start.
Yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, they're 2-2, so it wasn't terrible. But their last, like, the Boston game was the one that really stood out to me. Like that, like, sometimes 8-2 isn't always reflective of how a game goes. That was a legit 8-2 game. Like, man, they dominated that game. Like, I think the Bruins, I think they only had 14 or 15 shots. I got to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was only like almost outshot them like 2.5 to 1 that game.
But how about their road trip though? They go out west, beat the Oilers, Flames, Kraken, and Canucks. And the first part of that trip was back-to-back in Pittsburgh and St. Louis. The only one they lost was St. Louis. 5-1 road trip. Come back home, off for 2 days, slap the Bruins 8-2.
Yeah.
And then beat the Caps, who have been stingy defensively. They put 4 past them. I mean, the Canes are, I think, just a good team.
Yeah, no, that Washington Carolina game was really good. Obviously, Svechnikov got an empty netter to make it 4, but you know what? That was a really good game. And you know, give them credit. They were down 2-1 after the first, I think it was, because Duhaime had scored super late, and then they battled back. And your guy Martin Necas led the way with a goal and an assist to get them up ahead 3-2 until the late empty netter. And you know, as good as Carolina's playing, like Washington was right there, Frank. The Washington Capitals, I think, are they've looked very good so far this season.
The Ovi watch is on, man. Goals in 4 straight, 7 goals in 11 games to this point. It took him 34 games last year to get to 7 goals.
That's why I said at the start of the year he would do it this year.
He's on pace for 52. He only needed 42.
42, yeah. Oh,
We're gonna have to start the Ovi tracker. I'm telling you.
Like, you know, of course, he is highly motivated. And I thought, honestly, the additions that they made in the offseason, like, he was great down the stretch for the Capitals. And they didn't have a ton of offense. Now they've got way better all around that pads him up. And John Carlson on the back end, hell of a defender. I know we talked about him last week for the USA team, but I like Washington. They got size, you know, they got depth. They got grit. I like a lot of their makeup of their team. Unfortunately, Chikrin's out. That's maybe the only negative here lately for them, is that he finds himself injured now.
Well, and Matt Roy.
Yeah, well, he hasn't played. You know, it's funny. He didn't play. You know, basically, what did he play? 2 periods?
8 minutes and 39 seconds.
Yeah, so he got hurt on the second. So
I think a really competitive team. And I think we bet $1,000 earlier this season on John Cooper, whether or not he'd win Coach of the Year. But
we didn't bet $1,000
for charity. For charity,
yeah. But $1,000. Well, there's different odds. That it's one guy to the field, of course. But you were saying he should have no chance to win. Of course, he should have a chance. Great coach.
I didn't say no chance. I just said he wouldn't win.
Yeah, well, I didn't bet. But
Spencer Carberry should be in the mix.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they were good. Hey, he was a good coach last year. People talked about was he a finalist? I
think he was a finalist.
Yeah. So no, they rave about him, but he's got now some better skill around.
No, he wasn't. It was Rick Tocchet, Rick Bowness, and Andrew Brunette.
Okay. I thought he should have been a finalist, but he's I like everything Washington's doing. Right. You know what? When your best players are your best players, that always helps. But their system, we saw it last year because, Frank, like they won games when they had like a BB gun offense, right? Like they couldn't score to save their life last season. And you look at it, and I know that they had a terrible goal. It's because when they lost a few games, they get lit up. But they had to win all these low scoring or 1-goal games last year, kept them in it. And now he's got some offense to go with it, and we're seeing it. They're playing exceptionally well. Like it doesn't, and to me, it's not smoke and mirrors, right? Like they're not winning with something that I think is unsustainable or regression to the mean that some people like to use.
Mm-hmm.
But Ovi, hey man, it'll be fantastic when Gretzky starts to follow him around. I think Gordie Howe did for Gretzky when he chased, because that is a monumental record that a lot of people thought was never going to get broken.
We started talking about it maybe like 6-7 years ago, trying to do the math. And even then it was still like, you got to do this close to age 40.
Wow. Yeah. Like that's what's so impressive about Ovi is look at how many 50-goal seasons he's had in his 30s.
He's a horse.
Oh, he's a huge, strong man.
Is he the most is he one of the most durable players of all time? Like, I mean, I know there's not an Iron Man streak, but like the dude just does not miss games.
No, and well, and Iron Man streak, Frank, for guys who, and no offense to Doug Jarvis, but now Phil Kessel did not play like Ovechkin is physical, right? Since they started tracking hits in the salary cap era, there's only 2 guys who have more hits than him. Right? Like he's physical. No one has more goals than him. Like he's a unicorn in everything he does. He's huge. He's not a perimeter player. He goes into traffic. Like God, he used to have 200 plus hits a year sometimes. He's extremely durable. And if you look at, I know I broke it down to the start of the year. I think he's only missed due to injury like 35 games. That's it.
Out of like 1,472 games.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Out of 1,472 games, he's played 1,437.
Yeah, well, he's missed some other games due to like suspension, so that's not durable, right? Or COVID, right? And then got suspended 3 games because he didn't play in the All-Star game.
It was 3 games?
Yes. Yeah.
I thought it was just 1.
No. He is because I'll go look my article up. He had out of his 59
he skipped the All-Star game 3 separate times. 2016, 2019 and 2020.
Yeah. He's missed 3 games due to the All-Star game. So,
but I'm saying that wasn't a 3-game suspension. It was 3 1-game suspension.
3 games. Yeah. And then COVID, of course. There was some that were personal reasons that weren't injury related. Like and he's been suspended multiple times. So.
Yeah, he's been suspended at least 3 times.
Yeah.
Boarding, knee on knee, charging.
Yeah. No, he is. That's a really good question. Because of the style he plays, and let's be honest, Frank, when you're a superstar, it's not like I've never bought into the other, we're just going to leave Ovi alone. Not at all. Like no. He plays in traffic. That'd be a really good question. Who would be more durable than him? Like obviously Gordie Howe would come to the top of that list. But there's not many others. Like in this era, I think it would have to be him. I can't think of anybody else. Like, no offense to Phil. I know he had the record, but.
I know it's early still, and, this will even out. But his goals per 60 minute so far this year, it's just 11 games. It's tied for the highest of his career.
Yeah. Well, and some of that was empty netters, and I saw people getting all their shorts in and not because empty netters. I'm like, hey, if you're on the ice for the empty netter, I don't care. Like, I don't have much of an issue at all. We see more empty netters now in the NHL than we've ever had before because teams pull their goalie way earlier.
No one's ever said Ovi scores cheap goals ever. So, yeah. Do you know it took forever to start tracking it, but will anyone ever break his shots on goal record? That's going to be interesting.
Well, did he have more than Phil Esposito?
He has 6,663. It's by far the all-time ever.
Oh, you mean okay? Most in career, yeah. Because Phil the Thrill used to fire like 500 plus shots. I still think if we talk about the greatest goal scorers the NHL's ever seen, I think Phil Esposito is very underrated in that conversation. Like Phil scored goals at a ridiculous rate. And really just set a standard that no one had done before him. And then obviously Gretzky went to 92. But
Phil Esposito, he's played 200 fewer games, but he has 1,500 fewer shots than Ovi. That's like a career for some guys.
Oh.
1,500 fewer shots.
Yeah.
Well, Phil Esposito did have a 550 shot season when he had 152 points.
Oh, yeah.
And still bananas that he didn't. I don't know.
No. Phil was a big power forward in his era, man. And I think at times it doesn't get talked about enough of what a great goal scorer Phil Esposito was. He was a hell of a player, too.
Mm-hmm.
So let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk to the pod.
What's up, boys? Back with a fresh edition of Buy or Sell, brought to you by our friends at Bet365, the largest sports betting platform globally. You can download the app today and sign up with the promo code NATION to get in on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Coming in on the tail end of that Ovi question, the first one I had written down, like he's on a great pace right now. You buying or selling on Ovi doing it this year, Frank?
I was selling, and I've been selling the whole time, but I think I'm going to buy now.
Ooh, you're flipping. I like it.
I think you have to consider it.
Greg's?
Well, yeah, I said at the start of the year, I'm not going to change now. Makes no sense. No, now, if he scored 50 again, not only broke the record, but scored 50 for the 10th time, that'd be unbelievable. Like,
It'd be so awesome, though, if he scored
Oh.
and broke the record and then just skates off and is like, yeah, I'm done. I'm
Nah,
never going back again.
dude, no chance. He's honest. I could see Ovechkin. Well, he's definitely going to want to get to 900 because he's that close if he breaks the record. For sure, he wants to be the first because it just, hey, you're at 900 now, right? It just looks different. And God, depending, he keeps scoring. Could he then set a goal for himself to say, you know what? I want to play another 3 years, 30 goals a year, and try to get to 1,000.
That'd be crazy.
I think there's like a 0% chance of that.
Yeah, really right. But it would be amazing.
I think there's a chance that if he got to 900 this year, that he doesn't play next year.
Really?
I just a pure hunch.
What?
If the Caps are competitive, though?
Yeah, well, that's different, though, if they're competitive. If they're not.
Fair.
Wow, the Caps, like, I don't know, they look pretty competitive team right now.
They are. I say
and
that.
He also, if he retires at the end of the year, Frank, he's walking away. I know he's made a ton, but he's still walking away from $9.5 million next year.
Decent.
I don't see him doing it. I would be stunned.
He'd be walking away from $5 million next year because he has a signing bonus of $4 million.
Oh, so you're saying he'd retire after the signing bonus?
Well, the signing bonus is paid as an enticement only to sign the contract. So it's always important to keep in mind that you do not get it for playing. You get it for signing your name on the contract.
Now, what if you retire before the signing bonus is due?
That I don't know the answer to. I would believe that you would still be entitled to it.
Okay.
All right, next one I got for you guys. You're gonna have to. Ovi
ain't no quitter. He ain't retired.
Okay, but do you really think he's going to sign another contract after this one?
Well, Crosby's got. He'll have 1 year. Yeah, I do. Honestly, I think Ovi loves the game, man. And every player you talk to, you just can't get that urge and that excitement anywhere else in your life. And he's playing great. Like if he scores 45 goals this year, why the hell should he retire? No chance.
Okay.
All right, next one I got for you guys. Talking about great value contracts for young players. I mean, there was McKinnon for a few years, Pastrnak. This is the last year of Leon Draisaitl's $8.5 million deal until his extension kicks in. And I want to ask you guys, who are you buying on as the next great young star value contract? So I got some names for you guys. These are the players.
Can you not give names? It'd be more fun if you didn't give us ammo and we just did it off the top of our head.
Okay, you want to go off the top of the dome then? I was gonna give you a list of guys who signed under 23 for at least $7 million, but go first. Freestyle it, Frank. Who are you buying on to be the next great value deal?
It's 100% Jack Hughes. That's the next super value contract. That's the new Nathan McKinnon to me. I still don't really understand the thought process of why he signed that deal.
Well, look at when he had signed it, right? He signed it after his second year. He's banged up and he got $64 million and he'd played 100 NHL games that time?
Yeah, but think about if he just waited another year.
Yeah, Jack Hughes is a good one at $8 million. That's a crazy bargain.
Yeah, there's a few guys. This is a really good question because there's a few guys, and it's just a matter of, do you think, because there's two guys that come to the top of my head. Tage Thompson, I think, has a very good opportunity, but I'm actually going to go with Alexis Lafreniere. I think that's a guy who is he's going to get more opportunities all the time. big body. And you know what? He is, if you look at his kind of track record and his development, he's kind of on the exact same pace that McKinnon was. McKinnon's first 4 seasons in the NHL were okay. Like, hey, you're a 50-point guy. There's nothing wrong with that. And I know, I think he had 60 in his second year, but then he went like 53, 53, 53. And then he just blew up to 99. I'm not saying you can jump up that high in 1 year. Like, that's such a massive jump, but I'm going to go with Alexis.
Can I be Frank the Prick for a second? Why do you call him Alexis and then do the French pronunciation of his last name? Why not just like, you can't do half English, half French. It's either Alexis Lafreniere or not.
Alexis Lafreniere. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Frank the Prick.
Oh, by the way, that reminds me, I got a note from somebody about Frank the Tank. I might have to read it one day on the pod from Frank the Prick.
I got a bunch of people, a bunch of DMs that said people were rolling here.
But I got some firsthand knowledge from people. So that's, we might just save that for a day. I'll just bring it out as the example of Frank the Prick.
All right. So I don't think we're done with this question though.
No?
Who would be the second player that you would draft?
So some of the names I had here.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I did all this research.
I know, but it's not about you.
Well, I said my 2 guys, so I'll go with the 2 big ones. I'll go with Tage Thompson.
Okay. So, we'll do snake draft style. And Tyler, you got to weigh in, like give your own guy. But my second pick, I'm going Tim Stützle.
Ooh, Stützle's not a bad one. In my, what about Matt Boldy?
The first thing I think of with Matt Boldy is just appropriately paid.
Yeah, I mean, $7 million, but I just look at it as he's in, I think, year 1 or 2 of that extension. He's, pacing for over a point a game this year, was close to a point a game last year. I think that's one to throw into the conversation.
What about Brock Faber?
Yeah,
that's going to be a bargain. Are you kidding me? It probably already is.
Yeah, Jake Sanderson in that same range too.
I mean, Faber's playing 25 minutes a night and is putting up serious production. There was like literally no risk for the Minnesota Wild signing that contract. All the risk was on Brock Faber, that he's giving up more. I think that's how I view it. Crazy?
I don't know. Like, when you look at those long-term deals, so for him to be considered like a real value contract, you have to really overexceed it. And is he going to put up the offensive numbers to make it look like a huge bargain? Right? Like, look at Quinn Hughes. If we're looking at, like, look at Quinn Hughes's offense to his contract. Is he going to be better than Quinn Hughes? I don't think so. Like, not offensively. Probably better defensively, but offensively, I don't think he's going to, like, Quinn Hughes' numbers are pretty hard to match, and their contracts, if you look at it, right? So that's where I'd look at Faber. I think Faber is going to be hard to be considered that, because you got to put up ridiculous offensive numbers.
I don't think you do as a defenseman at that age. And particularly as a right shot guy, like I really don't. I don't think he needs anything more than what he already did in 1 year, 47 points. But if he's a 47-point defenseman and $8 million, you think people are going to look at that and at 21 years old, playing 25 minutes a night, that's only going to get better? Like, yeah, the risk wasn't on the Wild.
No, we're not talking risk. We're talking, will that be an over, like, oh my God, this guy could have
I think that's already the going rate. Why would it not be? It's already the going rate. And in year 7 of that deal, when he's still in his absolute prime, the cap's going to be $125 million.
Okay, but if he's only, my point is, are you not expecting more points by then? At that much,
he's 21. Money? Of course, there will be more points by then. Okay. Yeah. Want to throw a couple others at you? Dylan Guenther, absolutely insane contract.
He was on my list.
It's funny though, because you look at Clayton Keller and he signed his contract kind of around the same age, and his cap hit was 8 years times 7.15. You could make the argument for that for a chunk of time while the Coyotes struggled, that Clayton Keller's contract was an overpay.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Keller was pretty consistent though, right? Like not out of this world, but pretty solid. And like if to put up big numbers in today's NHL, like the year that Kane did it for a few years, that's what makes him great. Because most guys, you need like a running mate. Usually, it's kind of hard to be what I call a freedom fighter offensively, where you're infinitely better than, like, if you're going to have 85 points and someone else in your team has 45 or 50. It's hard to do. Like, you kind of need another running mate. Keller didn't really have that for a while.
First year of his deal, 7.15 million, 35 points in 56 games.
Yeah, about 56. So what does that be, a 50-point season?
At 7.15 million? That's tough luck.
Yeah. All right, there you go, boys. That one ended up eating up the rest of the time. I kind of thought it would get you guys on a good tangent. So that's a wrap on this week's edition of Buy or Sell, brought to you by Bet365.
Funny thing about that question is, if you ask Nathan McKinnon, you're like, I don't want to be known as that guy.
No, that's really, yeah, super disappointing, I would think.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Like, I don't know. Like, because I look at it and say, you sign it as a player, and if you never want the guarantee, then don't sign it. So
I think that's fair.
Right. So we'll see. I'll be curious. Like, I'm very curious about Faber in the offense, because, man, he's got the one thing that Faber has is going for his advantage is he has an elite offensive forward on his team now. Kaprizov is without question elite offensively. No doubt about it. He was before this year, but he's legit. And that's going to help any defenseman. You know, if you look at guys Roman Josi did it. He's a little bit of an exception, but usually a lot of the other guys, you have some other guys that are similar. Hughes had Miller and Elias Pettersson. Brock Besser scored 40 goals. You know, you need some other offensive guys to help you out for sure. So, Frankie, have yourself a good week. And we will chat on Thursday. That's the rundown, episode 333, brought to you by Fountain Tire. Stop in right now. You can save up to $225 off select set of 4 tires, including Goodyear, until December 14th. FountainTire.com.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.